Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, David. How are you?
I'm very good, Mark. How are you, sir?
Yeah, brilliant. Really good at the moment. Welcome to Out of the Blue, as we say every Friday afternoon.
Yes. It's I'm looking forward to this now. We're coming back to September and everything's getting ramping up again and getting exciting. So
Schools have woken up.
yes, they have. They have.
So today, David, we are looking at our 6 top tips for preparing copy for a school prospectus.
Yeah.
And effectively, we've got those 6 points that we're going to chat about today. So I'll just very quickly take you through what they are. They are: consider what you want the reader to do after browsing your prospectus. Point number 2 is ensure that you've got your vision and values before you start. Point number 3 is know your brand. Point number 4 is use positive and engaging language. 5, add your personality to it. And 6, keep it short and consistent, which I think is some specific advice for me there, as I fail to do that on most episodes of this show. So they're the 6 points that we think are most important when a school sits down and tries to put the content together for a prospectus. And we know from experience and from feedback that we get, and I think we've mentioned a couple of times on this show, how difficult head teachers and other people within schools can find this task. It's pretty daunting, really.
Yes. Yeah.
So we hope these 6 points really just give you, some pointers, really, give you some advice as to how to go about doing this and make it as easy a job as possible. So that first point that we had, which was consider what you want the reader to do after they've browsed the prospectus. What specifically are we talking there?
So I think that's really where we would call it call to action. So when the person's looking through the prospectus, what is it you want them to do once they've finished looking at it? Do you want them to pick up the phone? Do you want them to go to a page on the website? Do you want them to go to an event that you're putting on? Really, what action do you want them to take? And I think you need to signpost that throughout the copy. So have that in mind before you start. What is it that you want them to do with the prospectus? And then write around that so you are considering the action that they're going to take at the end of it.
And the call to action is something you'd want the designer to make really prominent, really obvious, to make it very easy for someone. They know exactly what you're asking them to do at the end.
Yeah. And make it consistent and regular throughout as well. So just something really simple to ensure that the telephone number and the web address is on the footer of every page. So, no matter where you are in that document, if it's 8 pages or 52 pages, trying to work out the number then, the pagination of a brochure, is, just make sure that it's there on every page. So as a minimum, they don't have to go looking for the number, the contact details.
Yeah, brilliant. I think it also ties into just making sure you know what the prospectus is designed to do, what you're going to do with it and where it's going to go and be distributed as well is important to know
exactly.
when you start. Okay, point number 2 was ensuring that you've got your vision and values before you start.
Yeah, I know it probably sounds really obvious, but and most schools do have some form of vision and values, written or prepared, but it's just making sure that you are completely aligned to those vision and values. Are they out of date? Have you not really looked at them for a couple of years, maybe? Make sure before you start copywriting that you understand them, that they are up to date, they are still, they still mean something to you, and make sure that your content is written around those vision and values so that they align. So when the reader's looking at the prospectus, actually when they then go to the website, which is more than likely, that actually everything is aligning, that there's a consistency between both.
Yeah. I think there's a mistake that I often see in some prospectuses that have been created, that the vision and value is included, but it's literally included under the title vision and values, rather than it running through that copy, and rather than thinking about, okay, well, this is what we want to talk about in this section, about the curriculum, for example. How do we align that with our vision and values? How do we relate it back? So the whole thing flows and is consistent throughout the way that you're talking throughout your prospectus, that's when it's really strong, isn't it? That's when it comes into its own.
Yeah, and it doesn't necessarily have to be verbatim, from the vision and values on the website. It just needs to allude to the same values that are written there. So yeah, I think that's just need to make sure that you understand what they are, that they're up to date, and that you're writing around the same vision and values.
Perfect. Well, this is one that we're always going to include. Point number 3 is know your brand. Now, we do talk a little bit about school branding from time to time.
And that's because it's so important. It's obviously we work with a lot of schools and trusts who develop their branding because they don't really have that in place. And I think first and foremost, you need to have that prepared. You need to have that designed and created and understand what that is and ensure that it's a reflection of what you're trying to, who you're trying to be. And then the copy needs to follow that. You need to understand what that brand is so that you can write around using the same language and the language that reflects that branding and that messaging.
Yeah. And again, I think it's really important when you're putting a prospectus together to consider when this has been produced. If I was to lay this out with all of our other communications, I was to sit it next to our website, and I was to put myself in the position of a prospective new parent or possibly a new member of staff. Is this the image? Is this what I want to present to them? Does it fit? Is it consistent? Is it right? Because if it isn't, it's probably wrong. You need to rethink what you're doing.
Yeah, and I think it helped by knowing the brand and knowing what your identity looks like and feels like. It's going to make it much easier to write. Yeah, it's really important to know what that is first.
Point number 4, use positive, engaging language. I think this is difficult. I think this can be really, really hard. It sounds really obvious that you should be positive and engaging, but actually the language that you use, there's a real skill to that, I think, and it can be easy to get it wrong as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We are providing a guide on writing your own copy for your prospectus, and really we would always recommend to have it professionally copywritten. They understand all these points. But if you are writing it yourself, then being positive is always looking at what you've written and making sure that the wording that you're using is done in a positive way, and not to say, oh yes, the school is not too shabby. It's it's not the right image that you're portraying. And I think the language that's in there, I think this is across any industry. You can fall foul of using acronyms, as we were talking about earlier, and language that possibly parents don't understand. Yeah. And it might be obvious because you're surrounded by educationalists every day and you all understand what you're talking about. But quite often, I receive things and I haven't a clue what the letters mean and what they're talking about. So it's just to consider the audience and actually even give it to somebody else who isn't a teacher, isn't involved in education, and just see if they understand what you're talking about.
Yeah. The positive element of that is really important, and there's an issue there that I come across really quite often with school leaders, which is that they're very reticent to appear to be showing off or to be big-headed in some way, and they're very uncomfortable with that. And so I always try and encourage them to say, well, this is all about being proud rather than showing off, if that makes sense. Being proud of who you are, developing your brand helps you do that, because the school is something that you must be proud of. This is what you do. This is, your provision is something that you've spent a long time making sure it's right for your pupils and for the parents that send the children there. So the positive part of it is you've every right to be proud of what you do. It isn't showing off. It's not blowing your own trumpet. Well, perhaps it is a little bit, but you're doing it in a positive way, because actually you have a responsibility to parents that are looking at the school to tell them the wonderful things about your school. Really, they need to know those things, and that's what it's about.
Yeah, there's definitely an Englishness about not being, not showing off too much.
We're all uncomfortable with it, aren't we? Basically,
yeah. And I think you're right. It's about being proud of what you've achieved at that school and what you can do for those children.
Yeah.
And parents want to see that, obviously.
Okay, point number 5. I really like this. This is almost about being brave, I think. It's add your personality to it. How would you do that? How would you add a personality to a prospectus?
Yeah. Well, I think if we take just ourselves, we've got quite different personalities, and I can see when you've written something and I've written something that they sound quite different. And I can think of some head teachers who I see on social media, and they're hilarious. And I can imagine reading a prospectus from those head teachers as opposed to some others, and you would probably be able to feel the personality of that head teacher within the copy. And I think it's important as the leader of that school that your personality comes across. People buy into people, they trust and believe, and especially with their children, the person who's leading that school. And I think it's really important that when there is, the head teacher is in place, that their personality comes across within the copy, because at the end of the day, parents are going to probably meet you at some point. It's got to reflect who you are, and they're going to buy into that. And I think it will be very apparent quite quickly if there's a disconnect between the two.
I spoke with a school business manager fairly recently, and we were talking about the process that they go through for admissions. And she said, I really don't matter if we miss out any of these steps, but every single parent has to meet with the head, who I'd just met with, actually. Yeah. And I sat and thought, I know why. Because if you met her, you're going to send your child to this school, because she's the strongest thing the school could possibly. She's just brilliant. Yeah. She's funny and she's engaging, but she's still professional with it. She's everything you'd want in a head teacher. What a massive asset to their admissions process that is. And I think you're right. I think it's hard to make that shine through it, certainly in printed form. It is tough to do that. But if you can bring your personality to it, all the better. It gives it that individuality. It makes it stand out. It's something you'll remember.
I guess there's, that's if it's about that person, the head teacher, that can come across in the welcome message. But then the school itself has to have a personality, and again, it's understanding what that is and just making sure that it's weaved in the copy, throughout the copy.
Brilliant. And the last point was point number 6: keep it short and consistent. We've seen plenty of massively verbose documentation that comes out from schools because there's a temptation to think you've got to present all of the information and that parents would need all of that. And keeping it short, that some of the best advice really that you can have is to remember that the information's on the website, and your prospectus is your sales brochure, basically. So you want to think about the things that sell your school, and that important information, those bits that parents need, they're on the website. Point parents to the website where all of the dull nuts and bolts, the things that they have to be able to access, they don't need to be in there.
Not in the prospectus, no. As you say, sales brochure, it needs to be short, punchy, grabbing attention, something that is going to make you stop as you're looking at the image. You're going to read a quote or something like that. It's just I think you can want to say a lot and want to put it in the prospectus, and it's not the right place for it. The website can do that, but that is something that isn't going to be read from cover to cover, probably going to flick through it. So you want to use it in short little bursts, so you grab their attention, and again point them to where what you want them to do. And that consistency thing is is don't ask 5 different teachers to contribute to the prospectus, because they're all going to write in a different way. It's got to be, they can make a contribution, but it needs to then be edited so it is consistent throughout, so it sounds like it's coming from one place.
I like the technique that Dean creatively takes to keep things short, and that is the way that he lays out the prospectus, and he places imagery in the prospectus before the text appears anywhere. So you're already thinking about that sales story and what you're trying to sell to parents. And then the designers tend to use those pull quotes, so those little bits of text that they put over images, so you have images that link to those pull quotes. And once they're in, it's almost written, actually. You read through, you get a really good sense of the school and what they're trying to put across. And I think that really helps you understand we don't really need a huge amount of text here. We just need to flesh it out a little bit. So you come at it from a different angle. You don't sit and try and write it all, lay it out first, know what it's going to look like first. I think that's a good tip that I've certainly picked up from Dean anyway.
Yeah, it certainly helps. And we often provide the framework for the design and then provide a word count for each section as well, which helps then, keep it short and consistent, because we're going to think about the layout of the page and how many words it will take to fill the space that it's got, and we're not going to allow it to be have too much text on the page, because we know that it will impact on the design and its end use, really.
Brilliant. Okay, well, we're very clear on the fact that we know that there's a future in prospectuses. We have lots of our clients are ordering and designing prospectuses for lots and lots of different reasons. It is quite a daunting prospect for lots of schools to put that together. So I'm hoping that those 6 points that we've outlined really help you get to grips with what to do when you're looking at planning your prospectus. And just to recap, they are consider what you want the reader to do after browsing the prospectus. So that with the calls to action that we talked about, ensure that you've got your vision and values before you start, and that those visions and values are reflected in the imagery and the content that you're using. Know your brand, absolutely imperative. Using positive and engaging language, adding some personality to it. Be brave. Don't be fearful of doing that. Keep it short and consistent. Think about those pull quotes. Think about speaking through the imagery that you use. That can really help you keep it short. So there's our 6 points. I hope they help everybody. Thanks so much, David, for helping me get through those this afternoon. And we'll see everybody again next week.
Yeah. Thanks very much, Mark. Great.
Thanks, David. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for watching Out of the Blue, and I hope you enjoyed it. Please subscribe and leave a comment below, and please ring the bell for notifications. I hope I will see you again soon. Bye.